I try to remain positive on this channel, but I just have to make a video about this. So given the constraints surrounding the reality war, Disney Plus not renewing its distribution deal, Ncuti Gatwa's early departure, it's understandable that Russell T Davies was working under significant production pressures. Within that context, this finale holds together pretty well, at least in terms of basic narrative cohesion. But if we're simply judging this as a season finale on its own right, it was pretty poor. And I do have plenty of issues with this episode, but the one that really dominates for me was what in the name of Raxacalcophallopatorius happened with Belinda. So Belinda is introduced early in the series as a distinctly feminist character. She rejects patriarchal labels, refusing to be called Miss. She distances herself from her controlling boyfriend, asserts both her personal and professional autonomy. And when the doctor invites her to travel with him, she declines, directly confronting him for testing her DNA without consent and firmly stating, "I am not one of your adventures." In doing so, Belinda transcends the typical strong female character archetype and functions almost as a meta-commentary on the show's historical treatment of women, positioning Belinda as a figure who will neither exist solely to support a male lead, nor to serve as a narrative device constrained by the patriarchal expectations of the show's narrative structure. And across the season, she continues to assert this independence, and the narrative appears to affirm this. She's not romanticised, she's not infantilized, or made emotionally dependent on the doctor. And then we get Conrad, a man who's been granted godlike powers by the so-called God of Wishes, and his worldview is steeped in toxic traditionalism. And so, unsurprisingly, he reshapes Belinda into the image of a wife and mother. That's his wish. And as a narrative move, this works. She's clearly unhappy, and the illusions begin to fall apart. She flees into the woods and screams in frustration. It's a powerful image. But then the show puts Belinda in a box. Not a metaphorical box, a literal, physical box, a sealed room in which she stays with her baby for the remainder of the story while the other characters move the story forward. And from that point onwards, her role is simply reduced to maternal caregiver. Her reality is shifted from single career-focused woman who is not presented as an unfulfilled figure in any way to a mother who needs to get back for her baby. She even now seems to wish that she could travel with the doctor, but she can't because of her maternal duties. And the doctor, who knows what her past reality was, seems kind of happy with this. He remarks, "I always win," and Belinda tells him he's the most amazing man in the world. The doctor calls it a triumph and leaves. Now, there is a very faint note of unease within Belinda. She says that she feels like she's forgotten something, but this is immediately dismissed by the doctor, who attributes it to the normal timey-wimey stuff. And that seems to be the end of Belinda's arc. So how are we meant to take this? What emerges for me is a deeply problematic message that even female characters who resist traditional gender roles ultimately find fulfillment in domesticity and caregiving. Belinda, who initially appeared to reject the structure imposed on her by so many of the Doctor's previous companions, is ultimately repositioned within it. Her independence is removed, and it's replaced with an ideology that equates female completeness with nurturing, self-sacrifice and emotional labour. And this, unfortunately, seems to reflect a broader trend across Russell T Davies' tenure. There seems to be a very narrow view of what fulfillment looks like for women under his show running. Heterosexual romantic partnership or motherhood. Rose ends up romantically partnered with one of the many David Tennants that seem to be floating around. Martha is paired with Mickey, Donna with Sean. And while Ruby Sunday currently resists this pattern, her arc kind of feels incomplete. The introduction of Belinda seemed to offer a genuine alternative. Not simply through strength or through competence, but through the rejection of being narratively defined by male figures. But instead, her arc is collapsed into the very structures that it appears to critique. The feminist potential of her character is neutralised, not through tragedy or through loss, but through an unquestioned return to normative gender roles. And what makes this especially troubling is the way it's framed. The episode positions this outcome not as a compromise, but as resolution. Forget Billie Piper returning. It was the sidelining of a female character whose promise lay in her resistance to exactly the fate that the show ultimately imposed on her that dominated this episode for me. For a showrunner that's been pushing LGBTQ+ representation, pushing representation for the disabled community, challenging our racial biases, this feels like a seriously weird choice. Russell, I love you, but what was that?